professional dancer, and right now she lives in France with her husband. So it's kind of hard to sort of meet face to face. So I think it's kind of apropos to sort of, work in this sort of like to work from these photographs. And this is the photograph she sent me so that we can sort of, work things out. So that's how I came about the image that we're going to work from today. And I went a little bit big today because, and as you see it, the marks will become more visible. It went a little bit big today because I figured, why not? You know what I mean? It's a great opportunity to just dive in and have some fun. So logistically, some of the things that arise when you're sort of working on a larger scale is just, like having the place to put it up. So like I have several easels here, like right in front of me. I have a half easel, I have a julienne easel, I have a full easel in my studio area that I'm at right now. I'm in a sort of my co-opted area that I sort of have started to draw and paint in. But so I have several easels, but when you start working on a larger scale, like a really large scale, it's really kind of hard to find a flat surface to work with. In those instances, it's good to just dive in and just sort of start using the wall. So I'm using like a yellow ochre sort of color, right? And I'm going to play around with the color. I already know I'm going to play around with the color. So basically, my first step is to get the general shapes that I see. And the other opportunity that working this scale does is it allows you to just really just go in and be kind of loose with your mark making. Be kind of loose and be kind of free. Change this light a little bit. See if that'll make it turn up a little bit. See a little bit.
Could you make the marks a little bit darker for us so we can see it? Because I'm having trouble seeing it.
I'll make them darker, but I mean, initially, the marks are kind of, to start off kind of a little bit lighter. Now, actually, what I'll do is I'll bring this rig in a little bit closer too, and that'll make the marks sort of become a little more visible. But they'll start to come to rather shortly. Also, one of the benefits of working with this sort of oil is I can cover over some marks. This table, I might have to grab that in a second. But I'll start with this. As I'm working, I'm sort of measuring as I go, so I can't really. We don't have a huge amount of time within the workshop that can sort of show everything, but I work through the body, as is often said in these drawing classes and in seminars and things that we teach.
So how do you approach putting the lines down on the paper? Are you measuring? How are you doing proportion?
Well, I'm measuring as I'm going. I'm correcting. I'm measuring and correcting as I proceed with the drawing. So I already anticipate that certain things are going to be a little bit off, right? They're going to be a little bit off. So I'm taking that into account, and that's why, like when you had mentioned early on, it's like when you go a little darker early on, the first marks are kind of light. It's sort of like a roadmap for what you're going to do a little later on, so you sort of build on that. So that's why I sort of started The very light, very faint silver. But as I move forward, I'll get a little bit darker, move things around. Or as I like to say, giving yourself the right to be wrong. So as you're working, you say, okay, well, that might not be what I want in the end, but it's a good sort of baseline for where I feel this figure is going to wind up. And I'm also working rather broadly. There's these wonderful Bantu knots. That's the hairstyle that her hair is, right? Her hair twisted up. So I want to sort of capture some of that texture. But of course, we only have a short amount of time. I can't do everything. But I can at least lay the baseline for the general shape of her head, ears, things like that.
Do you find that there's a difference between working from a photograph and working from life?
Well, working from a photograph is always going to be like you can't modify the reality in front of you. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like it sort of, so it makes it kind of difficult when it comes to things like drawing a figure and having the figure feel three-dimensional at times, But on the other hand, if you, it gives you something concrete. The photograph doesn't move. Models tend to move because, being a human being, moving is the more natural thing that we do. We move so that we can balance. We move so that we don't fall over, fall down. I just purchased a balance board in the last few weeks, and what's interesting about it is it made me reflect on how, like, when you have a model come and sit, a lot of people, oh, they moved, but standing on this flat, the balance board is basically a flat wooden plank, and it has like a round tube in the middle, and you place your weight on either side, and you adjust by shifting your hips, and it's very similar to what happens when you have like a model standing in front of you trying to maintain a pose. There's shifting. They might be almost imperceivable how small the shift might be, but they're shifting so that they can like maintain their balance, right? So as I'm moving, I mean, the initial line work that I did, it starts to sort of narrow down and things are getting a little more narrow, things are getting a little smaller, but I like this scale. I'm not gonna lie to you. One of the reasons why I want to do this because working this big is fun. It's fun, and because it really allows you to be free.
Bernard, a question from Melissa. How do you measure proportions? You say that you are measuring them, but like, how do you do it? Do you
How do I measure proportions?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this. Generally speaking, you know that, and she's, what, this pose is a little bit more of a difficult pose because she's not standing fully erect, and she's sort of like in a halfway position. One leg is folded over her arms. So there's some things that you sort of just have to, you have to make some assumptions about. You know what I mean? Like people talk about how many heads high, heads from the bottom of the feet to the head. It all depends. I mean, she's bent over. So her proportions are essentially cut in half, So your eye doesn't lie. Your eye doesn't lie. So use your eye, use your vision. If you have a model in front of you, If you have a model in front of you, um, take something like your pencil, something like that, and then you just sort of like eyeball it. Well, you know, if the body of in front of me seems to be about the length of this paint stick, you go with that as your unit of measurement. Or you can use a pencil, or you can use like use a pencil, or you can literally use like if you have like a wooden dowel or something like that, and you can sort of measure based on what's in front of you. You know, so I guess how I say you make those measurements on the fly. And like I said, this is a different sort of situation. I'm using a photograph, so I'm not measuring from life. I'm actually measuring from the photograph. This being my reference information, it has to have some, uh, you have to sort of take this as the truth. Whatever's in front of me in this photograph is my truth. Based on that truth, I'm going to sort of make my proportions and make my judgments, and then I'll adjust it as need be. Hopefully that answers the question, because it comes up. It's a question that a lot of people ask, and the reason why it's not being evasive. I just think that it all is. It's one of those situations where it like really depends on what's going on in front of you. Like you might say, oh, okay, this angle, like I'm looking here, this leg. I say this leg might be a little bit further out. Oh, and the other thing too, that whole principle of like the space around the figure is a definite shape. So I'm also searching for the shape around the figure that's inside of this photograph. What do I see around my model? How is she affecting the space around her? And those negative shapes are also giving you an indication of what's happening in the positive area. Yeah, you know, and I'll step back a little bit, take a look. And always make adjustments. Like if you feel yourself, or you see something and you say, like, you know what, I need to make an adjustment. Have to make a slight change because I feel like maybe the angle of this is wrong. That's definitely something that you have to be open to. Be open to make changes and adjustments as adjustments need to be made. And that makes that'll help you get that a little bit more accuracy while you're working, Yeah. I'm going to go here as if this is invisible. Okay. I mean, there's other things that come up as well. Just like as you sort of are working with the figure, you'll find yourself more and more familiar with how certain parts of the anatomy they look, generally speaking, and how does a foot look, how does a hand look. That's why it's important for those of us who are really interested in drawing a figure and getting it to feel like it has some accuracy, to practice drawing feet, drawing hands, things like that, drawing shoulders, things like that. And then what will happen is you'll have a general idea of how certain parts of the anatomy are supposed to look. Does this feel does this feel like a foot? Does this feel like a hand? You know, um, once you sort of get that general idea, once you get that general idea, going to another color, um, it becomes a little bit easier. Let's see, I think I'll play around with this white. Shiva is a different, like there's certain brands that you sort of can play with. Like Shiva is more, has a more waxy kind of feel to it, right? It's along more of like the student grade kind of, has a student grade kind of feel. You see this, right? What happens, it gets like, while you're working, it dries up. Like after you get done working, it dries up and forms like a skin on top of the paint stick, right? You have some brands that are like R&F, which are like more the highfalutin, more expensive brands, right? And they have a wetter, kind of like softer texture. Sometimes you want something that's a little stiffer. Sometimes you want something that'll leave, that you can sort of see that mark, and it'll be a little stiffer. It won't be as soft. Um,
Are you erasing right now?
Something that'll make a mark and leave it, you know? So that's sort of what I was thinking when I chose this brand. And it's good to think about those things when you start working. Like, what am I using and why? You know? This allows me to get into this modeling here.
Bernard, are you erasing with something right now?
No, I'm drawing right over top of it.
Oh, you're drawing over top of it.
So the two are
a lighter shade?
Say again?
Is it a lighter shade?
This is just white.
Oh, that's why. Okay, gotcha.
This is white. And it'll allow you to sort of blend. You can also blend a little bit with your fingers or something like that. I got my gloves on, so it's kind of messy. Right? But you can sort of smear it a little bit, you know. It's really fun stuff. And then, you know, and if you really wanted to, you could, which is something I've done before, you can take a palette and sort of like chop it up. You can actually like blend it up and even like dilute it with like linseed oil or something like that, linseed oil or alcohol. And that'll allow you to sort of like blend and get like those sort of middle colors and stuff. You know, just like paint, just like with oil paint. It's like I said, this is a transitional kind of thing. You can use it both ways, or you can take like it's surrounded by the paper casing like this, and that's so you know you won't be quite as messy. But if you really want to, you can use it in the flat side, like a drawing. You can just sort of get a nice bold mark like that, you know. You do like that. Use that to get some of your to shade with it. So it's a flexible material. I mean, I like using it. And I've taught it at Fleischer. I've done that at Fleischer several classes. Like I said, I mean, I really know how to paint. Now I'm going into it with, this is like in a alizarin crimson kind of color. What is this? It's but it's like I'm just going a little darker. Because you've seen it blend with the white and go a little lighter. You can see how it blends up with when you want to go a little bit darker. You know, there's some wonderful shadows here. You know, thinking about the anatomy, like here's a clavicle, right? Here's a clavicle being a collarbone, right? Right here, the bottom of her jaw, right? Some shadows here. Now do some blending here so you can see how these things blend up when you want to go darker too, okay? Now I'll probably go kind of crazy. Like, I mean, I'll start with this, and then I'll sort of go into it with some other colors and have some more fun with it. But this is a great excuse to start this drawing on my good friend. And if you ever get a chance to see Wanjiru dance, man. You should really take it. So really, there's some wonderful choreographers, not just her, but there's some wonderful choreographers in Philadelphia. Um, One in particular they come to mind, Dance for Nia, right? Antoinette Coward Gilmore is the founder and artistic director of Dance for Nia. And we talked about collaborating when things are a little less crazy, right? um, Doing some live painting and doing live painting and modern dance and that nice blend. Um, so, I'm quite sure we'll let everybody know when it comes to pass. So you can see I'm adding a little dark. You can see this sort of using marks are getting a little bolder, right? And I'm going to take this yellow ochre color. I'm going to blend this right into here. And we use this to blend this color here and get this little transition here in the shadow that we see. Right, and I'm just using the gloves that I have here, focusing on this torso and the shoulder right here. And then I'll add some highlights in it in a little bit so we sort of see his shoulder come together. Right? Right. Bina, I hope it's okay that I went a little big.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting to see the process happening on a large scale. It's definitely different. Do you feel like it's harder working large scale or sort of the same?
I think so. I mean, it's a little more difficult, but I mean, usually, but in a way, like I said, it feels it's kind of liberating in another sense because it's more physical, and most times we don't like try working on this sort of larger scale because I think it's even for me, it's like it's a little intimidating when you think of it, but sometimes I think it's good to just dive right in and just give it a try, see what works, you know? Especially if you haven't done it before. They were saying, oh, so many students wanted to work with the larger scale. It's like, you see this collarbone? See how it's popping? See how that collarbone is popping? It's beautiful, right? So we're going here, do some modeling in here. See that? And I'm gonna go right
How do you decide to put in like the highlights and the shadows?
Say again?
How do you decide to put in the highlights and the shadows? How are you seeing them?
Well, I'm definitely working through this photograph and letting that inform me of where it's going to be. But also while I'm working, and this is something that happens with watercolor a lot. I sort of predetermine where the lights and darks are going to be while I'm drawing by omission. Like I sort of leave a space or leave the place white where I think the highlight's going to be. So usually in watercolor, when I'm doing a watercolor class, we sort of talk about mapping out the lights and darks. But the same thing happens when you're working from like a predetermined image, like a photograph, or let's say even if it's a drawing from life, but you've done several sketches, and you say, well, I know the light area is here on the shoulder. Well, you leave that sort of that light area more of the white of the page, right? And you like work around it, you know, because you already know that light area is here. And you'll see it in your preliminary sketches and things like that. So that's it helps you to sort of get the highlights and make the highlights sort of happen by sort of having it like sort of moving in a sort of an intentional kind of way. You know what I mean? Because what happens if you don't do that is you'll get a drawing that'll flatten out a little bit on you. It'll get flat, it'll become like one flat area of color, like a just flat dark area of color. But if you plan out a little bit where some of the lights will be and let that just stay the white of the page, or I learned a technique called Reside, which a lot of people have asked me about, and it's in European painting technique where you plan out the lights and the darks, and you build them up with whites, and you build them up with whites, and you build your drawing up in grays, and by doing that, you already predetermine where the lights and the darks are going to be. That way, when you add thin layers of color, they automatically make the painting just comes together super duper quick, right? So now going into this.
Bernard, can you tell us again what you're using to draw?
Oh, sure. These are Shiva, Richardson Company. Shiva water artist paint sticks.
Are they oil-based?
Oil-based. Yes, they are. Oil-based sticks. So, and a lot of times what I'll do is I'll start with like oil sticks, and then I'll go from oil sticks to actual working with oil paint. Like I said, it's a transitional, and then other times I'll just sort of stay right here, and just let it, be a painting based, created through oil sticks themselves. And the reason why I'm working on this paper, and I haven't, if anybody was curious about this paper, like, why are you working directly on this paper? This is like oil based. This paper is oil primed. This is oil primed watercolor paper. So you can order it special, and it sort of has a very thin sprayed on layer of oil. And that prevents it from sort of seeping through the other side, but it also makes the oil, the oils that you're working with, the colors you're working with, it makes them sort of like sit on top. It's like a layer that'll make the color sort of come up a little bit. So one of the paintings I did a large drawing of a good friend that I used for the exhibit, for the fellowship, and actually I used this paper for that. So it's good stuff. I mean, you don't have to go this far. What you can do, if you want to, now this is additional information, but I'll share it if it's okay with Vita. Is it okay?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. One thing that you can do is you can gesso over the paper that you like 140-pound printmaking paper, 90-pound drawing paper. You can gesso over the back of a drawing book. You put that gesso on it, and it'll keep the it'll give you a nice layer for you to paint on top of. It's good to, if you're going to work with oil-based medium, it's good to prepare the paper before you start working with that oil-based medium. So that's and if you don't, what will happen is the oil will start to eat through the back of the paper itself, and you might not get that result that you desire. It might be a little bit might get a little funky on it, so to speak.
Bernard, how do you go about
sort of focusing on certain areas, so that you can actually see them sort of develop. So don't think that I would just, neglect this. And now that it sort of started, I'm contractually obligated to go into this thing and like really flesh it out a little bit. But that'll come later. See, what are some other things? I'm doing a lot of those techniques, cross-hatching techniques and stuff like that that we talked about. We've talked about in drawing classes, and people who have taken classes at Fleischer, my fellow, co-teachers. We always talk about, coming into play here. Doing a little cross-hatching here to build up certain areas, certain light areas, right? And cross-hatching, It's not just for drawing, it's also good for painting, but we're using paint sticks rather, You see, it gives it a nice, it's adding a little bit of texture to this to the skin, and that's kind of fun, All right. Here. The other thing that we can do here, I'm starting to feel it, Vita. It's getting into me. I'm starting to feel it. The drawing is starting to feel kind of good.
Great.
So let me go here. I'll test this out a little bit over this corner. It's too dark. Nice. That's a good color. So I've got all these warm colors in here. I'm going to throw some a cool color in here to see what happens if I sort of add that to it. Use this cool color, which is like a transparent green that we have here. And I have, one of the things that we always talk about is a painter thing. It's a thing that we always talk about as far as in my education is my MFA and BFA is in painting. So although I love to draw, that's the foundation of everything, I had a truckload of painting classes. And we always talk about how, you don't want to sort of use just the black, like ivory black, you'll see jet black, ivory black, I don't know, midnight South Carolina black, whatever you want to call it. But it is something to it when you mix a color to get like a dark color. Like this is a green, but I know you can see right there how dark and contrast it is to this sort of red color here, this sort of maroon color here. Blend those two transparent colors, one that's very cool and one that's very warm together, and you'll get like this sort of mixed black that you can make out of warm, or make out of cool, but it's a fun thing to do. And then by adding some greens, everything here is warm. I'm gonna add some cool to contrast some of this and make it sort of pop, and also give it that last give it a little push. I want to push these shadows a little bit, right? And like I said, I'll start with this this area here. Put this sort of color here, and I'll blend this in with some of these other colors here. Mm-hmm. Now, no, there it is. Use that in some of the shadows here.
Bernard, do you have suggestions on how one might approach getting a likeness?
Getting a likeness?
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand the question.
How to make a portrait or the face of the figure drawing
Oh yeah.
to look as much as the person as possible?
Oh, okay. I mean, that's all about, it's funny. It's all about, it's about practice. And then it's also about practice, and it's also about measuring. It's all about measuring. Because that's another question. I did a portrait class, watercolor portrait class, and it's another thing that we take on. And what it is all about measuring those little idiosyncratic places, like what is the shape of this ear? Like how precisely can I get the shape of this ear and these little details here, right? How precisely can I get that earlobe, and what is that sort of distance? What is that? Does this person have large eyes? Does this person have small eyes? I just need a little smear right here that I have to take care of, but I'll take care of that in a minute. Yeah, those really particular um, aspects of a person's face. Because I mean, if you think about it, that's how we're, if you think about it in terms of like compared to other faces, this, that I've seen, these eyes seem somewhat, say, closer together, they're somewhat smaller or they're larger, looking for those particular aspects of somebody's face. That's how you get a likeness, and the more, I guess, anal you are about making sure that measurement is telling you that truth that you're seeing with your eye, going back to your eyes. Is the more you get particular about that truth that you're drawing and saying with those measurements, the more it'll start looking like that person that you have in front of you, or that person you desire to sort of capture, right? That's it. That's really it. I mean, I don't think that's a lot of folks are looking for the super secret to it, but it's all about measuring. It's all about measuring. My head, if you did a drawing of me, it would look nothing like Vita or the person next to you or the person you live with, And it's like finding out those little differences and how things measure up. Cool? That good?
Yeah, thanks. I have another question here for you. How do you use your formal art training to create your personal style? And what is your favorite subject to draw or paint?
My favorite subject, I like people. And how do I use my mural arts training, they say?
Formal training.
Formal. Oh, my formal arts. I mean, I use it all the time. It's one of those things that becomes ingrained because it becomes part of the formal art training becomes part of your problem solving. It becomes part of your problem solving arsenal. You know what I mean? How do you? I'm having trouble sort of getting this building right. So, I can go back into like some of the studies I did when I was drawing boxes and stuff like that, or because essentially you can think of the buildings as sort of square. My favorite subject though, is really capturing like people, capturing sort of trying to capture that little thing that you see. My hands are a little dirty, but here, I can grab this. Like, let me give an example. This is a person. We worked together. I was doing workshops in West Philly, and and I met this wonderful person, her husband. They came to the house. We shot some pictures, and it's like you get an opportunity to sort of like commemorate somebody that you really think is really cool, or you'll get an opportunity to say you'll have a favorite singer. Like this is Bobby McFerrin. I love Bobby McFerrin, right? So I decided to just draw Bobby McFerrin, and I could do it because I had the training that told me. I'll show you again. They sort of told me how to do it. So I like drawing people. People I know, people I admire, people who I like their work. Wanjiro, I always admired her, not only as a good friend, and also as a dancer. You know, I have a thing that dancers like. I made this summer. I made a point since we were working with photographs because we were social distancing and doing the drawing that I selected dancers and sort of drew dancers and got dancers in these poses. Found these wonderful photographs of people, dancers in poses and models that were sort of in dancer poses and all that. And I just thought it was just a wonderful thing. So I think that's going to go on. So right now I'm really, really motivated by what dancers sort of do with their body, almost like a living sculpture. You know. So hopefully that answers the question. And that formal training, it will come back. Here's the thing. It's not the only thing. Like the formal training you have, I mean, it's not the only thing. If you have all the training in the world, but you don't sort of have an idea or don't have a concept of what you want to make, it's going to be hard to make somebody care. You know what I mean? And what I found is, and it's not me, even if you never had any formal training, it's like, it's like the caring, you care about what you choose to paint or draw, right? Like I actually care about this subject here, but I also, I enjoy painting itself. I'm not doing this because simply because I feel like I need to learn something. I'm doing this because I enjoy the process of making art this way. So find something you enjoy, and then do it. And when you're learning about it, embrace that thing that draws you to it. I like choreographing. I like doing. It doesn't have to be drawing or painting. It could be sculptural. It could be photography. But I do think you have to love what you do. Otherwise it becomes a situation where you're like, why am I even doing this in the first place? So is that good? Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Hope everybody realizes I love to talk. I'll talk about art as much as you want to, because that is also my thing.
I love how the piece is coming together. It's really beautiful to see you draw it.
Oh, thank you. I think it is coming together well. I like this material. This material is really fun to work with. It's really fun to work with. I do like the way that it can, like, because it's soft still. I mean, eventually it does dry, actually. But because it's so soft, you could turn a line to a shadow at the blink of an eye, and that in itself is kind of,
Can you mix like linseed oil into a paintbrush and paint into it?
Oh, sure you could. You definitely could. I mean, if I wanted to, I could do that. I could just sort of take it in that direction. It gives you that option. It gives you that option to sort of just take it into like a full out painting vibe. Yeah, so you sure could go ahead and mix some linseed oil into it. Or, you could, like, one other thing that you might want to do is you might take oil pastels and draw into it. You could take oil pastels and just draw right into it. So yeah, you can go either way. So going into the throat area right now.
So it seems like the way you're approaching at least this piece specifically is you sort of start out by sketching out the structure kind of lightly. And then you start to approach little piece by piece, kind of building out the shadows and the highlights. Is that accurate?
Well, that's how I'm doing it now. Yeah, yeah,
Is that
absolutely.
how you usually approach
That's how I'm
it?
approaching it. And part of it is so I could render an area in a short amount of time. I can sort of like make a piece. Like I could really stay on the drawing part of it a little bit longer, but like I could stay on the light part, like you were saying, it's kind of light, can go a little darker. I could stay on that area a little longer if I wanted to, or I could sort of like, but I decided I was going to sort of build up some of the areas here, so you can see how some of the stuff blends up, you know. Um, and then, this part right here is really dark, so I'm going to go here with this white, and I'm going to work around that, work this white into it, and see what happens. Take this off of here a little bit. Taking the skin off of this white a little bit. Yeah, so I'm definitely doing what you were saying. Sort of working up piece by piece, sort of like working around it. And it's kind of cool that way too. I mean, I'm sort of liking that whole process of sort of doing this because it's like uh, you, it's forcing some of the mark making to sort of take a life of its own. You know, I mean, it's reminding me of painters like Alice Neo, who would have certain areas she would like sort of work out, and then other areas she would just leave white. You know what I mean? Like she would have a subject sitting on a couch and she would just leave the background a certain way. And you know, yeah. And I'm going to correct it as I'm working on it. So I'm not going to be married to anything until the piece is itself finished. You know. And the reason why I say that is because, I might decide, that an area is, I thought I worked something out but then now I give it a second look, and it's like maybe I want to work it out in a different way or a different color. So I like the idea and concept of sort of leaving a question mark at the end of a session. Look at that. That's a nice brown. There you go. Let it be a question mark at the end of the session as opposed to an exclamation mark, Um, that way that way the piece can grow, the piece can grow. Like we all grow as we sort of make our art, we live our lives. I don't want to be in a position always where it feels like it's stuck. You know what I mean? I don't want it to be, because I definitely, I feel it like the piece should challenge you and challenge your perception as well as like forcing you to grow with the piece itself. Like I have this thing where I feel like you should grow as your drawings and paintings and sculptures is made. Like if it should take you to another place, you know? Because not that it should be in control of you always, but I mean, it should, I mean, you should evolve. I mean, it's like you plant flowers outside, right? And you have annual and you have perennials. Like as a painter, you're a perennial type of person. Perennial meaning that, you continue to grow. You have periods where you'll change, but you'll continue to grow. Annuals are pretty for a little bit of time and then they die out. And I want to be a perennial kind of painter. You know what I mean? In person. You know, I don't want to have a situation where it's like, um, you know, I'll make the art, but I mean, but then it doesn't. I don't evolve. I don't sort of change as the years go by. Because then I would be. I think that's boring. You know, I think that's boring. And I think that I've been told there's some great painters around the area that some have taught a Fleischer, James Dupree, the great James Dupree, you know, and I've sort of like heard them say similar things about like fads and you know stuff like that. And I think it is about growth. You know, you want to be interested in while you're doing this. You have to grow along with it. You know, I'm not the same painter that I was last year. I'm not the same painter that I was since the or draft or drawer that I was um, last month. you know, I'm constantly in flux. So, so that's something for anybody that's sort of interested in that little tidbit. I mean, you can feel differently, but I feel like you do have to sort of grow.
How
Welcome
do
back
you
to
know?
Natalie.
Sorry. Quick question. How do you know when the piece is finished?
How do you know when the piece will tell you when it's finished. The piece will tell you when it's finished. Well, that's some kind of generic BS. I'm not going to say that. It's not true. Sometimes you need another person to come into you and look at you and say, "Look, you've been beating that thing to death. It's going crazy." Sometimes you need another pair of eyes. Sometimes you need to sit a piece down and not touch it for a couple months. Sometimes you need to look at other artwork that other people have done. Sometimes you just need that. You need to step back and realize that you've accomplished the things you wanted to accomplish with it, and ask yourself a question: do I need to keep working on this, or can I find the truth I'm looking for in another painting? And this is like a step along the way. So it's really introspective. It's like it depends on what you're doing and why you're doing it. You know what I mean? You know, um, for instance, if somebody commissions me, like every now and then as a painter, I'll take on a commission. Like somebody will ask me to do a portrait of them, their spouse, and then I'll take it on and I'll create a piece. And at some point, I have to ask myself, have I checked all the boxes? Have I sort of, is it what the person wanted, what that other person wanted? And then if that person is satisfied, that might mean that's time for me to stop. So hopefully that answers the question, because I feel like it depends on the piece. It depends on the piece. It depends on the purpose of the piece, and it depends on. Sometimes it might be a deadline. Seriously.
Yeah.
You got a deadline. You say, this piece has to be done by tomorrow. Ta-da! It's finished. You're awesome. Welcome. You're welcome.
Well, Bernard, we're coming up on 7:30, so I just wanted to see if we could get a picture of this piece when it's finished.
You can.
So I can share it with everybody.
No problem. I mean, I literally just opened that pack of sugar, so now I get to go ahead and work on this. I'll send a picture when it's done.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it'd be a little bit, but let's see where it goes.
Yeah.
Right?
Awesome.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. Join us again next week. We'll be back on Tuesday with a color theory presentation from Lara Contu.
Bye.
So do join us then. Thanks so much. Have a good night.
Bye, Bernard.
Bye, Bernard.
All right, bye. Thank you.
Thank
Daddy.
you.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.